Matthew 23 is a powerful and sobering chapter, where Jesus delivers a series of sharp rebukes against the religious leaders, specifically the Pharisees and teachers of the law. He exposes their hypocrisy, pride, and legalism, warning both them and the people of the consequences of such behavior. In verse 1 through 12, Jesus begins by addressing the crowds and his disciples, warning them about the behavior of their spiritual leaders. Jesus acknowledges their teaching authority. However, he immediately tells the people to practice and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do, because they preach but do not practice. He criticizes them for binding heavy burdens of rules on others while refusing to help lift them. Their religious acts are done solely to be seen by others. Jesus instructs his disciples to reject hierarchical titles that imply spiritual superiority, emphasizing that they are all brothers with only one teacher, Christ, and one Father, God in heaven. He concludes with the principle of humility. The key message is that Jesus is our only teacher. In verses 13 through 36, Jesus addresses the crowds and his disciples, warning them to obey the Pharisees' teachings but not their example. He accuses the Pharisees of hypocrisy, saying, "They do not practice what they preach, they seek honor and status in public. They make religion burdensome for others. They focus on minor details while neglecting justice, mercy, and faithfulness. They perform religious acts for show and are blind guides. They are whitewashed tombs, outwardly clean but inwardly full of dead bones and uncleanness." Jesus pronounces 7 woes, judgments on them for their sins. 1. They block people from entering the kingdom of heaven through their legalism and false teaching, neither entering themselves nor allowing others. 2. They travel over land and sea to make a single proselyte, only to lead him into their same hypocritical system, making him twice as much a child of hell. 3. They focus on trivial distinctions in oaths, swearing by the gold of the temple versus the temple itself, showing they prioritize material wealth over spiritual truth. 4. They meticulously tithe small spices like mint, dill, and cumin, but neglect the most important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. 5. They obsess over outward purity and rituals, while internally they are full of greed and self-indulgence. 6. They are like tombs that look beautiful on the outside, but are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness, appearing righteous outwardly, but being full of hypocrisy and lawlessness inside. 7. They build and decorate tombs for past prophets while preparing to kill the current one, Jesus. This shows they bear the guilt of all the righteous blood shed from Abel to Zechariah. The key message is Jesus calls out the religious leaders as hypocrites for preaching one thing and then doing another. In verses 37 through 39, Jesus expresses deep sorrow over Jerusalem, longing to gather its people like a hen gathers her chicks. He prophesies that their house will be left desolate. The chapter ends with a reference to Jesus not returning until they say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." The key message is that this points to a future time when Jerusalem will recognize Jesus as the Messiah. There are 4 key themes in Matthew chapter 23. 1. Hypocrisy exposed. Jesus condemns religious leaders who appear righteous outwardly, but are corrupt inwardly. 2. True righteousness emphasizes justice, mercy, faithfulness over ritual and appearance. 3. Accountability of leaders. Leaders have greater responsibility and will face greater judgment if they lead others astray. 4. Judgment and lament. While Jesus pronounces judgment, his heart is heavy with sorrow for those rejecting God's salvation. Matthew 23 serves as Jesus' final public discourse and his ultimate theological and moral indictment of the Jewish leadership before beginning his passion narrative. As Christians, it challenges us to ask 3 critical questions. Am I careful not to focus on external religiosity at the expense of justice, mercy, and faithfulness? Am I aware of the influence I have on others, and do I use it responsibly? Do I recognize Jesus' heart for those who reject him and pray for their salvation?